If you're fascinated by real-life family drama where the truth is more devastating than any lie, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. This ending will haunt you long after it's over. My name is Daniel Cooper, and I'm about to tell you how finding $300,000 hidden in my childhood home destroyed my family in ways that still keep me awake at night. This isn't a story about greed, though greed played its part. It's about what happens when you discover that everything you thought you knew about your family was a carefully constructed lie. It started on a Saturday morning in March 2023, 3 days after my mother's funeral. Mom had passed away suddenly from a stroke at age 68, leaving behind our family home in suburban Philadelphia and 3 adult children who thought they knew everything about her life. My siblings and I had gathered at the house to begin the difficult process of sorting through her belongings. Jennifer, my older sister at 45, was there with her husband Mark. My younger brother Ryan, 38, had driven up from Baltimore. And I was there with my wife Sarah, trying to figure out how to divide a lifetime of memories among 3 people who'd grown apart over the years. The house felt empty without Mom's presence. She'd lived there alone for 15 years, ever since Dad passed away from cancer. We'd offered multiple times to help her move somewhere smaller, but she'd always refused. "Too many memories in these walls," she'd say. "I can't leave them behind." And we didn't understand what she meant until we found the money. Jennifer was cleaning out the master bedroom closet when she called us upstairs. Her voice had a strange quality, not excited, not scared, but somewhere in between. "You need to see this," she said, pointing to a section of wall behind where Mom's clothes had hung. "The wallboard is loose here, like it's been removed and replaced multiple times." Ryan pulled at the board, and it came away easily, revealing a hollow space in the wall. Inside were vacuum-sealed bags, stacked neatly in rows. Through the clear plastic, we could see bundles of $100 bills. For a long moment, none of us spoke. We just stared at what had to be hundreds of thousands of dollars hidden in our mother's bedroom wall. "What the hell?" Ryan whispered finally. We pulled out all the bags and laid them on Mom's bed. There were 12 bags in total, each containing $25,000 in $100 bills, $300,000 that Mom had hidden from everyone, including us. "Where did she get this kind of money?" Jennifer asked, her voice shaking slightly. "And why would she hide it?" I added. We searched the rest of the closet and found something even more disturbing, a small metal box tucked in the corner of the hollow space. Inside was a collection of photographs, old newspaper clippings, and a letter addressed to "My children, if you're reading this." The letter was in Mom's handwriting, dated just 2 months before her death. As Jennifer read it aloud, we learned the first of many truths that would shatter everything we thought we knew about our family. Jennifer's hands trembled as she read Mom's letter. "My dearest Daniel, Jennifer, and Ryan, if you're reading this, then I've passed away without finding the courage to tell you the truth while I was alive. I've been a coward, and for that, I'm deeply sorry. The money you found, $300,000, is yours to split equally. But before you decide what to do with it, you need to know where it came from and why I've kept it hidden all these years. Your father and I were not the people you thought we were. The life we built, the home you grew up in, the comfortable childhood you remember, it was all paid for with money that came from someone else, someone I loved before I met your father." Jennifer paused, and we all exchanged confused glances. "Someone Mom loved before Dad?" His name was Michael Brennan. We met when I was 19 and fell deeply in love. He was brilliant, ambitious, and wanted to change the world. We were engaged to be married when everything fell apart. Michael was involved in something illegal. I didn't know the details at the time, and I didn't want to know. All I knew was that he suddenly had access to a lot of money, and he was planning for us to disappear together and start a new life. But I couldn't do it. I loved him, but I couldn't be part of whatever he was involved in. So I broke off our engagement and told him I never wanted to see him again. 3 months later, Michael was arrested. Whatever he'd been involved in, it was serious enough that he was sentenced to 25 years in federal prison. I was devastated. but also relieved that I'd made the right choice. What I didn't know was that before his arrest, Michael had hidden money, a lot of money, and he'd left instructions for it to be given to me. Not right away, but years later, after things had cooled down and no one was watching anymore. The letter went on to explain that Mom had met and married Dad 2 years after Michael's arrest. They'd built a life together, had 3 children, and she'd tried to forget about her first love completely. But 15 years ago, the money arrived. Someone left an envelope at our door with $300,000 in cash and a note from Michael. For the life we should have had together. No strings attached. Your father never knew. I hid the money immediately and told no one. I couldn't bring myself to spend it, but I also couldn't make myself give it away. It felt like blood money, but it was also the only piece of Michael I had left. Every year, on the anniversary of when he went to prison, I would take out one of the bags and look at it, thinking about the life that could have been. Then I'd put it back and return to the life I'd chosen. I know this makes me sound terrible. I loved your father deeply, and I loved being your mother. But there was always a part of my heart that belonged to someone else, and this money was a reminder of that lost love. Do with it what you think is right, but please try not to judge me too harshly. We're all more complicated than we appear. With all my love, Mom. The silence that followed was suffocating. My mother, the woman who taught us about honesty and integrity, had hidden $300,000 in dirty money for 15 years while keeping a secret relationship in her heart. This is insane, Ryan said finally. Mom kept money from some criminal and never told Dad. She said there were no strings attached, Jennifer pointed out, though her voice was uncertain. Yeah, but did you catch the part where she looked at it every year, on the anniversary of when her ex-boyfriend went to prison? I couldn't keep the bitterness out of my voice. That doesn't sound like someone who moved on. But the letter wasn't the most shocking thing in that metal box. The newspaper clippings would reveal a truth that made the hidden money seem insignificant by comparison. The newspaper articles were yellowed with age, carefully preserved in plastic sleeves. The headlines told a story that turned our understanding of our mother's life completely upside down. Federal prosecutor's son sentenced to 25 years for embezzlement and fraud. Michael Brennan, 24, stole $15 million from tech startup investors. Brennan family disgraced by son's criminal enterprise. Jennifer spread the articles across Mom's bed, and we read them in stunned silence. Michael Brennan hadn't just been involved in something illegal, he'd orchestrated an elaborate investment fraud scheme that had destroyed dozens of families' life savings. But what shocked us most was the photo accompanying one of the articles. It showed a young Michael Brennan being led from a courthouse in handcuffs, and standing in the background, barely visible but unmistakable, was our mother, watching with tears streaming down her face. She was there, Jennifer whispered, at his sentencing, after she said she'd broken up with him. Ryan was reading another article. Listen to this. Prosecutors believe Brennan hid the majority of stolen funds before his arrest. Despite extensive investigation, only $2 million of the $15 million has been recovered. The implication hung in the air like poison gas. The $300,000 in Mom's wall wasn't a gift from a lost love. It was part of the stolen money that had ruined innocent people's lives. We have to give this to the police, I said immediately. Wait, Jennifer said. Let's think about this. Those crimes happened over 30 years ago. The statute of limitations must have expired by now. That doesn't matter, I insisted. This money was stolen from real people, people who probably lost their life savings. People who've probably moved on or died by now, Ryan added quietly. And technically this money isn't ours anyway. It was Mom's and she's gone. No one even knows it exists. I looked at my brother in disbelief. Are you seriously suggesting we keep stolen money? I'm suggesting we don't rush into anything, Ryan said. We need to research this, figure out the legal implications, understand what we're dealing with. But as we continued reading the articles, we found something that made the decision much more complicated and much more personal. One of the articles included a list of Michael Brennan's victims. And there, fifth from the top, was a name that made my blood run cold. Robert and Margaret Cooper lost $250,000 in retirement savings. Robert and Margaret Cooper, our paternal grandparents. That can't be right, Jennifer said, her voice barely above a whisper. Grandma and Grandpa Cooper were victims of the same fraud that Mom's boyfriend committed? I felt sick. Did Mom know? Did she know that Michael had stolen from Dad's parents? We searched through the rest of the contents of the metal box and found another letter, this one written in a different hand. The signature at the bottom made us gasp. It was from our father, written just months before he died. Margaret, I've known about Michael Brennan for years. I found out 3 months after we got married when my parents told me about losing their retirement savings. When they described the man who'd stolen from them, I realized it was the same man you'd been engaged to. I never told you I knew. I watched you grieve for him in secret, watched you struggle with guilt and confusion, and I never said a word, because I understood something important. You chose me, you chose our family, you chose a different life, but I also knew about the money. I found it 5 years ago when I was looking for old tax documents. I saw the bags in the wall, and I knew immediately what it had to be. I never confronted you because I understood why you kept it. It wasn't about the money. It was about holding onto a piece of your past, a reminder of who you were before you became my wife and our children's mother. But I need you to know something. My parents never recovered from losing that money. My father had to go back to work at 70 years old. My mother died worried about making ends meet. The stress probably contributed to both of their early deaths. I don't blame you for Michael's crimes. You didn't know what he was doing, but I think you've known for years whose money this really is, and I think that's why you could never spend it or give it away. If something happens to me before we can resolve this, please tell the children the truth. They deserve to know that their grandparents were destroyed by the same man whose money now sits in our wall. The money belongs to my parents' estate, whatever's left of it. Do the right thing, Robert. The silence that followed was absolute. Dad had known everything. He'd known about Michael Brennan, about the stolen money, about how it connected to his own parents' financial ruin, and he'd carried that knowledge alone until his death. Mom knew Dad knew, Jennifer said slowly. That's why she never spent it. She couldn't, knowing what it had cost his family. But she also couldn't give it back, Ryan added, because then she'd have to admit everything. I looked at the money spread across the bed, $300,000 that represented our grandparents' stolen retirement, our mother's hidden past, and our father's silent sacrifice. We have to return this to Grandpa and Grandma's estate, I said. It's what Dad wanted. Their estate? Jennifer frowned. They both died years ago. Everything they had went to Dad, and then to Mom when Dad died. Which means, technically, this money is part of Mom's estate now, which makes it ours. You can't be serious, I said. You read what this money cost them. I'm not saying keep it, Jennifer said defensively. I'm saying we need to think this through carefully. If we go to the police with this, we could implicate Mom in receiving stolen property. Her reputation would be destroyed. Her reputation. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Jennifer, our grandparents died in poverty because of this money, and you're worried about protecting Mom's reputation? Ryan stepped between us. Everyone calm down. Let's not make any decisions while we're emotional. But the damage was already done. The discovery of the money had revealed fractures in our family that we didn't know existed, and we were about to discover that the truth was even more complicated and more devastating than we'd imagined. Against my protests, we agreed to table the decision for a week while Jennifer researched the legal implications, but I couldn't let it go. I needed to understand the full story of what had happened to our grandparents and how it had affected our family. I started by going through old family photos and documents that Mom had stored in the attic. What I found painted a picture of our father's childhood that we'd never fully understood. There were letters from our grandmother to various government agencies begging for help after losing their retirement savings. bank statements showing accounts drained to zero, notices of foreclosure on properties. Our grandparents had been financially destroyed, just as Dad's letter had said. But what struck me most was finding our father's college transcripts. He'd been attending law school when his parents lost their money. The transcripts showed he'd withdrawn after just one semester, right around the time of Michael Brennan's arrest and sentencing. I called my Aunt Linda, Dad's sister, to ask about that time period. What she told me made everything even worse. "Your father had to drop out of law school to support your grandparents," she explained. "They lost everything. Their retirement, their house, their savings. Your dad gave up his dreams and took a job at the factory to help them." "Did he ever talk about resenting that?" I asked carefully. "Resent it? Daniel, it destroyed him. He was supposed to be a lawyer. Instead, he spent 40 years in a factory job he hated, all because some trust fund kid decided to steal from hard-working people. After I hung up, I sat in the attic, surrounded by evidence of my father's sacrificed dreams. He'd given up law school, taken a job he hated, and built a modest life, all while knowing that his wife had $300,000 in stolen money hidden in their bedroom wall. Money that had been stolen from his own parents. The weight of that knowledge must have been crushing. When I returned to Mom's house that evening, I found Jennifer and Ryan already there, and they had news that would change everything again. "I found something," Jennifer said, her face pale. "Something Mom didn't include in her letter." She held up a legal document dated 15 years ago, right around the time Mom had received the money. It was a contract, and Michael Brennan's signature was at the bottom. But it wasn't a simple gift agreement. It was much more complicated than that. The document Jennifer had found was a legal agreement between Mom and Michael Brennan, written through intermediaries while he was still in prison. And its contents revealed a truth that made all our previous discoveries seem simple by comparison. "This isn't just a gift," Jennifer explained as we read through the dense legal language. "This is a contract. Michael was paying Mom $300,000 in exchange for specific services." "What kind of services?" Ryan asked, though his voice suggested he wasn't sure he wanted to know. "Raising his daughter," Jennifer said quietly. The room fell silent, except for the ticking of Mom's grandfather clock. "What?" I finally managed to say. Jennifer pointed to a specific clause in the contract. According to this, Mom agreed to raise Michael Brennan's child as her own in exchange for $300,000. The child was born 2 years before Michael's arrest, and the mother, whoever she was, gave up her parental rights. My mind was racing. "Are you saying one of us is Michael Brennan's child?" "No," Jennifer said slowly. "The timeline doesn't match any of our births, which means—" "No, there's a fourth sibling we never knew about," Ryan finished, his voice hollow. "We frantically searched through the rest of the documents and found birth certificates, adoption papers, and medical records. They told a story that rewrote our entire family history. Michael Brennan had a daughter born in 1985. When he was arrested in 1987, the child's mother, a woman named Lisa Martinez, decided she couldn't raise the baby alone. But she also didn't want to give the child up to strangers or let her grow up knowing her father was a convicted felon. So Michael had arranged for the child to be adopted by the one person he trusted completely, our mother. Mom had agreed to take the 2-year-old girl and raise her as her own daughter. In exchange, Michael would ensure she received $300,000 once he was released from prison, money he'd hidden before his arrest. But here's where the story became truly devastating. Mom had gone through with the adoption. The little girl had lived with our family for 3 years. We should have had a younger sister, someone we'd grown up with and loved. Should have, past tense. "Where is she?" I asked, though I was afraid I already knew the answer. Jennifer's hands were shaking as she pulled out the last document in the box, a death certificate dated 1990. Emily Marie Cooper, age 5, cause of death, drowning accident. "Oh my God," Ryan whispered. "Mom lost Michael's daughter." But as we read through the remaining documents, we discovered that the truth was even more complicated than we'd thought. and it would explain why Mom had never been able to spend or give away that money. The police report from 1990 was brief but devastating. 5-year-old Emily Cooper had drowned in the family swimming pool while Mom was inside the house. Mom had been doing laundry and had lost track of time. When she came outside to check on Emily, she found the little girl floating face down in the shallow end. The report concluded it was a tragic accident. No charges were filed, but the psychological evaluation attached to the file painted a picture of a woman consumed by guilt. Mrs. Cooper blames herself completely for the child's death, the psychologist had written. She states that Emily was not her biological daughter, but was entrusted to her care by someone she loved. She feels she has failed both Emily and that person in the worst possible way. There were also letters in the box. Correspondence between Mom and Michael Brennan spanning 25 years, all centered on Emily's death. In the first letter, written shortly after Emily's funeral, Michael had written from prison, "I don't blame you, Margaret. It was an accident, but I need you to understand that Emily was all I had left in this world, the only pure thing to come from my life. And now she's gone." Mom's response was heartbreaking. "I blame myself every day. I should have been watching her more carefully. I should have filled in the pool. I should have done so many things differently. The only thing I can do now is dedicate my life to being the best mother I can be to my 3 children, honoring Emily's memory by loving them the way I should have loved her." But Michael's next letter revealed why Mom had kept the money. "I'm sending you the $300,000 anyway, even though you no longer have Emily. Not because you earned it, but because I want you to have it as a reminder. Every time you look at that money, I want you to remember the little girl who drowned while you weren't paying attention. I want you to live with that guilt the same way I have to live with mine for the choices that put her in your care." The money wasn't a gift or payment. It was punishment. Michael Brennan had sent Mom $300,000 in stolen money as a permanent reminder of the child she'd lost, and Mom had kept it hidden in her wall for 15 years, unable to spend it because it felt like blood money, unable to give it away because it felt like giving away Emily's memory, unable to tell anyone because then she'd have to explain who Emily was and how she'd died. "This is why Dad never forced her to get rid of it," Jennifer said quietly. "He understood what it represented to her. But it destroyed him anyway," I said. "He gave up his dreams because of the man who sent this money. His parents died in poverty, and he had to watch his wife keep a reminder of all that pain hidden in their bedroom." Ryan was staring at the old photographs of Emily we'd found, a beautiful little girl with dark curls and a bright smile. Our sister for 3 years, gone for over 30 years, and we'd never even known she existed. "What do we do now?" he asked. It was the question we'd been avoiding. We had $300,000 in stolen money that had destroyed our grandparents, represented our father's sacrificed dreams, and stood as a memorial to a sister we'd never known we'd lost. And we'd been fighting over it like it was just an inheritance windfall. The days following our discovery were some of the darkest of my life. Jennifer, Ryan, and I barely spoke to each other. Every time we tried to discuss what to do with the money, old resentments and new accusations would surface. Jennifer was convinced we should keep the money and split it 3 ways. "Mom suffered enough," she argued. "She lost Emily. She lived with guilt for decades, and Dad knew everything but chose to stay anyway. They made their peace with it. We should too." Ryan was torn. Part of him agreed with Jennifer, but part of him couldn't get past the fact that our grandparents had been destroyed by this money. "I keep thinking about Grandpa working at 70 years old while $300,000 sat in our wall," he said. "How is that right? I knew we couldn't keep it, but I also didn't know how to return money to victims of a crime that happened over 30 years ago. Many of them were probably dead or had moved on with their lives. The breaking point came when we discovered something that made our decision even more complicated. Emily's biological mother was still alive. I'd hired a private investigator to track down Lisa Martinez, Emily's birth mother. What he found was heartbreaking. Lisa had spent the last 33 years in and out of mental health facilities, never recovering from giving up her daughter and then learning she'd died. She blames herself, the investigator told me. She believes that if she'd kept Emily instead of giving her up, the drowning would never have happened. I met with Lisa at her assisted living facility. She was 58, but looked much older, worn down by decades of guilt and grief. Michael told me Emily would have a better life with Margaret, Lisa said, her eyes distant. He said Margaret would love her and protect her, and then she died. It was an accident, I said gently. So everyone keeps telling me. But Emily would be alive today if I'd been a better mother, if I'd been strong enough to raise her alone. As I drove away from that meeting, I realized something important. The money had destroyed everyone it touched. Our grandparents, our father, Emily, Lisa, Michael, and our mother. All of them had been casualties of one man's crimes and the web of consequences that followed. That night, I called Jennifer and Ryan and told them we needed to make a final decision. Not in Mom's house, surrounded by ghosts and secrets, but somewhere neutral where we could think clearly. We met at a coffee shop and spent 4 hours arguing, crying, and finally coming to a decision that none of us were entirely happy with, but all of us could live with. Our decision wasn't simple or clean because the situation wasn't simple or clean. We decided to split the $300,000 into 3 parts, but not for ourselves. The first $100,000 would go to Lisa Martinez for Emily's care. It couldn't bring back her daughter or erase decades of guilt, but it could ensure she had quality care for the rest of her life. The second $100,000 would go to creating a scholarship fund in Emily Cooper's name, helping children whose parents couldn't afford swimming lessons or pool safety education. If Emily's death had to mean something, it could mean preventing other children from drowning. The final $100,000 would be split among the remaining victims of Michael Brennan's fraud scheme that we could track down. The investigator found 7 people who were still alive and had never recovered their losses. It wasn't anywhere close to what they'd lost, but it was something. We decided to keep none of it for ourselves, not because we were saints, but because we understood that this money had poisoned everyone who touched it. Our grandparents, our father, our mother, Emily, Lisa, Michael Brennan himself, all of them had been destroyed by these bills. We weren't going to let it destroy us too. But before we could implement our plan, we received a letter that would change everything one final time. It was from Michael Brennan himself, recently released from prison after serving 33 years of his sentence. His letter explained the one truth that Mom had taken to her grave, the one secret that made everything else make terrible, heartbreaking sense. Michael Brennan's letter was waiting at my house when I returned from the coffee shop meeting. He'd apparently learned about Mom's death and had written to us care of her address, which my mail was being forwarded from. Dear Daniel, Jennifer, and Ryan, by now you've probably found the money and discovered some version of the truth about your mother and me. But there's one thing Margaret never told anyone. Something she made me promise never to reveal while she was alive. Emily wasn't just my daughter, she was our daughter, Margaret's and mine. We had a brief relationship after she broke off our engagement, but before my arrest. Margaret was pregnant when I was sentenced. She never told anyone, not her family, not mine, not even the man she eventually married. When Emily was born, Margaret was already seeing your father. She told him Emily was his daughter, and he believed her. Or maybe he knew the truth and chose to love Emily anyway. I'll never know. But I knew Emily was mine, and when Margaret agreed to formally adopt her after my arrest as part of our arrangement, it was really just a legal cover for what was already true. Emily was her daughter. When Emily drowned, Margaret didn't just lose a child she'd agreed to care for. She lost her own daughter. The guilt she felt wasn't just about failing in her duty. It was about losing her biological child while distracted by daily chores. The money I sent wasn't meant as punishment, though I know that's how she took it. It was meant as payment for raising our daughter for 5 years and as compensation for the pain of losing her. But Margaret could never forgive herself enough to spend it. Your father knew. He knew Emily was mine, and he loved her anyway. He knew about the money, and he let Margaret keep it because he understood what it represented. That's the kind of man he was. Better than I ever could have been. I'm dying now. Liver cancer, the doctors say. I've wasted my life on bitterness and regret. Don't waste yours the same way. Whatever you decide to do with the money, do it with forgiveness in your hearts. For Margaret, for me, and most importantly, for yourselves. Michael Brennan. We sat in my living room, the letter spread out on the coffee table between us, trying to process what this meant. Emily wasn't just a child Mom had agreed to raise. She was our half-sister. Our father had raised his wife's daughter by another man, loving her as his own, even knowing the truth. Dad knew, Jennifer said for the third time. He knew Emily wasn't his, and he loved her anyway. And when she died, he stayed with Mom, Ryan added. Through all that grief and guilt, knowing the child wasn't even his, I thought about my father, quiet, steady, working that factory job he hated for 40 years. He'd given up law school to support his parents after Michael Brennan destroyed their finances. He'd raised Michael Brennan's daughter as his own. He'd stayed with his wife even after finding out she'd kept $300,000 of the money that had ruined his family. Our father had been a better man than any of us had understood. We need to add something to our plan, I said. Part of that scholarship fund should be in Dad's name too. Robert Cooper, the man who loved a child that wasn't his own and never asked for recognition or gratitude. Jennifer and Ryan agreed immediately. 3 months later, we stood at the dedication ceremony for the Emily Cooper Memorial Swimming Safety Program and the Robert Cooper Scholarship Fund. Lisa Martinez was there, tears streaming down her face as she thanked us for giving Emily's death meaning. 7 elderly people who'd been victims of Michael Brennan's fraud attended, shocked to receive checks that partially repaid what they'd lost decades ago. One of them, a 79-year-old woman named Dorothy, told us, "I gave up hoping for justice 30 years ago. This isn't about the money. It's about someone finally acknowledging what was taken from us." Michael Brennan died 2 weeks after the ceremony. We didn't attend his funeral, but I did visit his grave once, months later, and left a photo of Emily. She'd been his daughter too, even if he'd never had the chance to be her father. The house in Philadelphia sold 6 months later. We split the proceeds 3 ways and never spoke about the secret money again. But the experience changed all of us in ways we're still discovering. Jennifer left her high-pressure law firm and now does family law, helping people navigate complicated situations with compassion instead of judgment. Ryan volunteers teaching financial literacy to low-income families, helping people avoid the kind of fraud that destroyed our grandparents. And I work with a non-profit that provides mental health services to families dealing with traumatic loss. The secret money didn't just shatter our family. It rebuilt us into people who understood that life is complicated. People make mistakes. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is love someone anyway. This story proves that secrets don't just hide the truth. They change everyone who carries them. The most devastating revelations aren't always about betrayal or greed, but about the impossible choices people make out of love and guilt. If this story moved you, please subscribe for more real-life accounts of families who discovered that the truth can both destroy and heal. And remember, the people you think you know best might be carrying burdens you can't imagine. Thanks for watching.